Well, hello. We continue our look at the healing stories in the Gospel of Matthew. We've made it to Matthew chapter 8, verses 14. Matthew chapter 8 is full of healing stories. Verse 14 is where we are today. When Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to serve him. Man, poor Peter's mother-in-law. I always sort of chuckle when I read this. So she's in bed. She's got this fever. Maybe she's dying. He heals her, and immediately she gets up and starts serving him. You would have thought that, you get the rest of the day off after you get healed from something, but not Peter's mother-in-law. So that evening they brought to him many who were possessed with demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and cured all who were sick. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took our infirmities and bore our diseases. So he cast out the demons with a word. I wonder what that word was. It doesn't say. It does make me think, though, in the beginning of the Gospel of John, when it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Let me read that. John chapter 1 says this, in the beginning was the Word, and here it's capital W Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. Now, none of that language is found in the Gospel of Matthew at all, that sort of philosophical language about who God is. I mean, in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is born of a virgin, and that's one of the Gospels where we have the birth story. But yet it says that he healed. The only place we really see this kind of language is here, where it says he cast out the spirits with a word. We see in other places where Jesus is dealing with demoniacs, and there's actually another one in Matthew chapter 8 that we'll read in a couple days, where it says that the spirits recognized Jesus, that Jesus could speak, that they could understand somehow the language, that Jesus could understand them, they could understand Jesus, that there was some understanding. And so this passage makes me think about that beginning in the Gospel of John, and in the beginning was the Word. It also makes me think about the beginning of the Bible itself in Genesis, and Adam and Eve, they wanted to know, right, they wanted to know between good and evil, and all knowledge and all truth. And that's why they went and they ate of that particular tree. They wanted to know something that it wasn't meant for humanity to know for whatever reason. God didn't want humanity to know that. And the demons, these spirits that are possessing people in the New Testament, well, they're not humans. They're somehow otherworldly, heavenly beings, or sort of dark spirits. And I wonder if that's the word that Jesus is speaking to them, that somehow they embody this difference between good and evil, and their pure evil has entered the body of these people. And what Jesus does is he speaks a word of good that exposes their darkness, so that then the healing can begin. And what this makes me think of is when people who I've spoken to knew that they were sick. I mean, they could feel it in their body, or their body was breaking down. They didn't know exactly what the illness was, and you go to the tests, and the doctors, and you get the tests and the labs and the results, and there's this period of time in which there is great uncertainty, that there's no word about what it exactly is. And because there's no word about what it is, it's just a kind of darkness or void that hangs over these people as they have explained it to me. And because there's no word about what the diagnosis is, there's also no thought about what the cure is. If the doctors don't know what the disease is, then they don't know how to work for a cure. And so you go through this period of not knowing and uncertainty and fear and thinking about the worst. And then the diagnosis comes, the labs come through, and the doctors know. And even some people who I've spoken to that received terrible diagnoses after that felt somehow relieved. Because now they knew. They had the word for it. They knew what it was. And because they knew what it was, now there was a possibility that doctors could begin applying a healing agent to their affliction. Well, no one understood these spirits in the ancient Near East, and they just understood that they possessed and overtook lives. Have you seen that? Whether it be cancer or some other kind of disease, that have you seen for people who that disease just possesses and overtakes their life? And then I've seen some other people who have had the same diseases, and somehow amidst it they gained strength and fought that disease like moment by moment, and were an inspiration to the people around them. And so I see those spirits in the New Testament, and Jesus bringing knowledge, a word that recognizes what it is and that it needs to go. And I see people with a kind of positive attitude about healing. And there's research about sort of prayer and positive attitude when we're going through something, and the kind of acceleration of healing that can happen. And I've seen that be true in people's lives, and even be true in people's lives who still succumb to their disease. But yet they had a power. It might have taken their body, but it didn't take their spirit. And once they could speak to that, understand what it was, come to terms with it, name it, they were able to live a sort of power over that illness. And so it didn't take their spirit. I'm just hoping for myself, if one of those days ever came where I got that diagnosis from the doctor that wasn't good, that I would be the kind of person who could claim a power over that healing, over that physical illness, so that physical illness didn't also take my spirit. If that's you, thank you for being one of those people. If you're in that situation now, we pray for you to have that kind of power. If there's loved ones around you who are in the midst of this battle, I encourage you to help them to gain that power and that perspective. For Jesus spoke, a kind of power over these spirits, that ran the spirits out, and that let the life of the people continue. May that be true in our lives. God bless.